said 2 words. Aren't you excited? Sure, Dad. I scrunched down in the seat of the car. That way, he couldn't see my face. He couldn't see that I was lying. We were driving to Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake. We go to Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake every summer. It's a vacation resort with cabins, a golf course, a big lake, and some other stuff. Lots of families go there because they have a camp for kids. Their grown-ups dump their kids in the camp. Then they play golf or hang out in the clubhouse. Are you sure you're okay, Brian? Dad asked. Leave him alone, honey, my mom said. Brian's probably a teeny bit nervous about being in the teen camp this year. Nervous wasn't the right word. Terrified was more like it. Dad cleared his throat. He always clears his throat before he gives a pep talk. Look at it this way, Brian. The teen camp will help you get over your shyness. You will feel more grown up being with older kids. You'll feel. Anyway, you belong there. You're 12 years old now. That's right, I thought. I'm 12 years old, and I like to see 13. You're going to have a great time, Dad insisted. I know you're scared now, Mom said, but the time is coming when you won't be afraid of anything. Just wait and see. Mom and Dad had it all wrong. Sure, the teen camp made me a little nervous, but what made me more afraid were the stories about Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake. Stories about creatures in the night, about howls and shrieks and enormous footprints, about werewolves living by the lake. I've been hearing these stories since we started spending our vacation at Thunder Lake 6 years ago. I've been really scared ever since, and that really annoys my parents. My parents think I'm a wimp, so I keep my mouth shut about the stories, but I'm still scared. There's the 10-mile sign, Dad called out. I sat up straight and stared out the window. Sure enough, the sign said, Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake, 10 miles. Next came the 5-mile sign. Time was running out. Finally, I spotted the sign I've been dreading. Welcome to Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake, Thunder Lake. A family resort. Swimming, hiking, boating, golf, tennis, and werewolves. The teen camp had 10 kids in it. A guy named Kevin was the only other 12-year-old. He and I were the youngest. Kevin had red hair and the whitest skin I've ever seen. The older guys made fun of him because his mother forced him to smear on lots of lotion to keep from getting sunburned. I have brown hair and eyes, and my skin doesn't burn. So, they don't joke about the way I look, but I'm short and kind of a klutz. And that's what they make fun of. The 3 oldest guys were the toughest. Jake, Phil, and Don. They were all 15. Jake had dark curly hair and a gold earring in one ear. Phil had beady blue eyes and always wore a red Bulls t-shirt. Don was short, wide, and just mean. If I had the guts, I called him Fatso. Kevin whispered to me sit on you and squash you to death. When it was my turn to bat, I trotted to the plate. Don was the catcher. When he saw me, he called, "Easy out." Then he grinned, and I froze. I've never seen Don smile before, so I've never seen his teeth. But I could see them now. They were the longest front teeth I've ever seen in my life, and they were sharp, like fangs, like a wolf fang. Then Don did something strange. He shut his mouth really quickly and turned his head away, like he forgot he wasn't supposed to smile. I swallowed and licked my lips. Every second I stood at the plate, I expected to feel his fangs stick into my leg. When I struck out, Don grinned again. I couldn't believe it. His teeth looked normal. His fangs were gone. But I knew I hadn't imagined them. Then I remembered the stories about werewolves. They started out as humans. They didn't change into werewolves all at once, but on the night of the full moon, total werewolves. Could Don be a werewolf? After the game, I told Kevin about Don's teeth. Then I waited for him to laugh, but he didn't. "Man," he said, "I heard all the stuff about the lakes and families changing into werewolves, but I didn't really believe it. Are you sure it wasn't a trick?" "I guess it could have been," I admitted. "But if he wanted to scare me, why did he try to hide the fangs?" "Yeah," Kevin agreed. "We better be careful when the full moon comes." Later, I looked up the dates of the moon on Mom's little pocket calendar. Only 4 nights until the next full moon. I wanted to tell Mom and Dad how afraid I was. Afraid Don would come after me. But I didn't want them to get on my case about being such a wimp. So I didn't say anything. Not even when they went to play cards at the clubhouse and left me alone in the cabin. I kept telling myself that there was no such thing as werewolves. That Don was just a kid. Everything was quiet for a while. Then I heard rustling outside the cabin. My heart started pounding, but I told myself it was a squirrel. The rustling grew louder. My knees began to shake. I told myself it was just a raccoon. I heard a low growl right outside the door, then scratching sounds, and then another growl. I told myself it was Don. I shut the lights off and peered out the front window. The moon lit up the darkness. In the distance, I saw something red moving through the trees towards the lake. A red Bulls t-shirt. Fell, running through the woods like a wild animal. As soon as Mom and Dad came back, I told them I didn't care how wimpy I sounded. "Oh, Brian, don't you get it?" Dad asked. "The guys are just playing a trick on you. They know you're scared, and they're taking advantage of you." "I know it's hard not to be scared, dear," my mom said, "but it will all change soon. Trust me." "Your mother's right," Dad agreed. "I'm surprised you fell for that trick. Don't you realize how easy it is for someone to sneak up to a cabin and make a few scary sounds?" "Okay, so it's easy to make scary sounds and growls. How easy is it to make wolf tracks?" Because that's what I found the next morning. Not regular wolf tracks. These paw prints were at least 10 inches long. I found them in the dirt around the cabin, and I followed them until they disappeared into the woods at the exact spot where I seen Phil the night before. nights later, the teen camp had a cookout by the lake. I didn't want to go, but since the moon wasn't full yet, I figured I'll be okay. After we ate hamburgers and tossed marshmallows, we all sat around the campfire. Jake told a spooky story about some guy with a hook for a hand. I didn't pay much attention. A guy with a hook for a hand didn't scare me. Werewolves did. I kept my eyes on Don and Phil. The firelight threw weird shadows on their faces. It turned their eyes blood red. I expected them to start growing fangs and claws any minute. But nothing happened. When the cookout was over, we started along the path towards the cabins. Suddenly, I realized I'd forgotten my new jacket. Mom would kill me if I left it out in the sand all night, so I ran back to get it. The moonlight lit up the dark beach. I saw a figure kneeling in the sand. When he lifted his head into the sky, something glinted in the moonlight. Jake's gold earring. As I watched, Jake held his arms up towards the moon, opened his mouth, and howled. The blood-curdling howl of a wolf. I knew no human could howl like that. I turned and ran up the path as fast as I could. I caught up with Kevin. "Kevin, did you hear that?" I guessed it was Jake. As I raced up to him, Kevin quickly stuffed something in his mouth. But he wasn't quick enough because I caught a glimpse of it. A piece of hamburger meat. Raw hamburger meat. The blood from the meat oozed down his chin. Kevin was one of them. One more night until the full moon. I was terrified, but I figured if I stayed in the cabin, I'd be safe. Then I learned about the overnight trip. We hiked to a campground, pitch our tents, and sleep under the sky. On the night of the full moon. No way, I thought. I had to get out of it. But how? On the day before the overnight, I told my mom I had a sore throat. "I think it's my tonsils," I croaked. "Brian," Mom said with a sigh, "you had your tonsils out 2 years ago." How could I have been so dumb? Now, even if I really got sick, she'd never believe me. Next, I tried making myself sick by swallowing too much water during swimming. All that did was make me choke a lot. Then I tried rubbing what looked like poison ivy on my face and arms. Nothing happened. Finally, I decided to tell the truth. Well, not the whole truth. I knew my parents would never believe that. So, I just sort of told them part of it. "The guys are mean," I said. "I know they're going to do something to me awful. Please, please don't make me go to the overnight. Please." Dad crossed his arms. Then he cleared his throat. "Brian," he said, "if I let you stay in the cabin, it would be the worst thing for you. Maybe these guys have been a little rough on you. But if you let them know how you're scared, it will just get rougher." "Your father's right," Mom said. "You just have to be patient. Everything will be okay." "But Mom, that's enough, Brian," Dad said sharply. "I don't want to hear another word. You're going on the overnight, and that's that." So there I was, stuck in the woods with at least 4 werewolves. When it started to get dark and the stars came out, I ducked into my tent. "Hey Brian, what you doing?" Kevin yelled. "Don't you want to eat?" "Yeah, right. What's on the menu?" "Raw squirrel." While the others ate, I spotted a light through my tent, the bright orange light of the rising moon, the full moon. I crunched down in my sleeping bag. I crossed my fingers and hoped I'd been wrong all along. Maybe nothing would happen. That's when I heard the first howl. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My heart banged away like a hammer. I heard the savage howls before. I had to get out of there. I had to make a run for it. I wiggled out of my sleeping bag. Then I crawled across the tent and pulled the flap back a little bit. Peeking out, I saw Phil standing in the front of the tent in the red t-shirt. Except he wasn't Phil anymore. Thick, dark hair covered the face and arms. White fangs poked out of his mouth, gleaming like daggers. He raised his head to the moon and howled again. Phil had become a werewolf. As his howl died down, I lifted the flap a little more. Shadowy figures began to emerge from the other tents. Growling, snarling figures with thick fur and sharp fangs. My heart beat double time. I recognized them all. Don, Jake, Kevin, and the 5 other kids in the teen camp. Werewolves, every single one of them. They huddled around Phil, formed a pack. Together they raised their furry heads and howled at the moon. The sound turned my blood to ice water. Before I moved, the werewolves turned their wild eyes on me. Their fangs glowed as they began moving towards my tent. I squeezed my eyes shut. My whole body shook. Raw squirrels wasn't on the menu. I was. The growls grew louder and louder and louder. My eyes popped open again. The werewolves were closing in. I opened my mouth to scream in terror, but I couldn't make a sound. I tried to stand, but my legs had turned to jelly. My heartbeat thundered in my eyes. The pack crept closer and closer and closer. Then Phil's eyes met mine. He put his furry hands under my chin. He pulled off his mask. My mouth fell open in surprise. Phil laughed and laughed and laughed. Then Jake, Kevin, Don, and the others took off their masks and began laughing as well. "Welcome to teen camp, Brian," Phil shouted. "We pulled this trick on a new kid every summer, but you were the best." "Yeah, you really fell for it hard," Jake ordered. He pulled a little tape recorder out of his pocket and turned it on. First, I heard the single howl. After a pause, the horrifying howling I just heard minutes before. "A whole pack of wolves," Jack explained. "It's just a sound effect tape." Phil held up the old shoes he carved up to make wolf tracks. Don showed me the fake bangs he wore during the baseball game. Kevin held out a plastic bag. "Ketchup and chopped spaghetti," he said. "Looked like raw hamburger meat, didn't it?" Dad had been right. It was all a trick. I sighed with relief and crawled out of the tent. The guys all laughing and slapped